Welcome on, everyone. This is Antoine, your host of the IB UBU show, where we talk about all things leadership and success stories. Today, I'm super thrilled and excited to welcome back none other than the great Evan Ferl. So, Evan, welcome back. You know,
Thanks.
you're down in the history books as the first ever guest of the IB UBU show back in
Go.
2020. And now you've made it into the record books again because you're the first guest to come back and do it again.
I plan on being the third guest or the third coming back 3 times too. So I'm looking forward to that record whenever I get to set it.
All jokes aside, Evan, it's so great to catch up with you again. It has been almost 3 years since that first interview we did,
Yeah.
August of 2021. You were gracious enough to indulge me as I was beginning sort of this journey, experimenting with having these conversations, which are really
Yeah.
because I love to learn from people like you, and obviously going to share the videos so that others can learn from you as
Love it.
well.
Yeah.
A lot's happened, obviously, for both of us since that time. So I thought to reach out to you because I saw you posted on LinkedIn recently that you started something called Altumare Capital. So ultimately, I want to spend most of the time today just hearing all about that. But just to
Right.
when we spoke last, again, August 2021, you were at Poshmark, you were the GC. And since then, you guys went public and then ultimately got acquired, which is super exciting. So I just thought I'd sort of start there. Talk to me about that experience, because obviously when we join startups, many of us, the hope is to either have an acquisition or get acquired and or go public. And in your case, you got two of those on the same one. So just talk to me about that experience. And is it everything it's cracked up to be? Anything you can share with those of us that are hopeful of having a similar experience?
It's funny. I was a member of this group Tech GC, which is exactly what it sounds like, right? It's a group of tech GCs. And they had this like IPO conference that I hosted. And I made the joke at the front of the conference as I was like, based on how hard it is to run a public company, this conference should be called the Tech GC Stay Private. Like, don't go public. I think it's one of those things that like everybody wants to do, but like you just don't realize like it, unlike an acquisition, which like you hit it and you close and everything is basically good. With an IPO, you're now a public company. And all of a sudden you have all this public company reporting and obligations. And instead of just like managing your cap table on an Excel spreadsheet or in Carta, all of a sudden you're, giving out public securities to everybody. You have to report on that to the street. It just becomes like a much more arduous process, right? So like, I think that sure, it's something that everyone should do. I candidly don't even know how I got the opportunity to do it. Usually, as I think we all are, we're in this like chicken and egg battle where it's like somebody only wants to hire somebody that's got the experience, but if you can't get hired to get the experience, how do you get the experience to get hired, right? So I was like sitting there. I remember when I was leaving Hired and I was interviewing with like 3 different companies, 2 of which were Series A, and one was Poshmark that was getting ready to IPO. And I remember I made it to the final round of all 3 of those interviews, and the 2 Series A companies were like, I was talking to the CEO, and they were like, we really like you, but the problem is that like you don't have IPO experience. And I want to be like, hey, candidly, you're a Series A company. You don't got to worry about my IPO experience for like a decade, right? If you ever got to worry about it. But then Poshmark, credit to the CFO and the CEO, called me up after all my interviews, and they were like, "You want to take this company public with us?" I was like, "Let's go." I don't know. I was playing tennis the other weekend, and I was telling the guy I was playing tennis with that like what I lack in skill, I make up for in confidence. So like I believe that like I can do anything. Like you put me in like a room with a patient that needs heart surgery, and you give me a book that's good enough, like I might be able to make it happen. And maybe that's stretching it a little bit, but like I think that like, you put people in the right place and you give them the right tools, they're going to succeed, right? Whether they've done it or not, as long as you have the drive and the want to do it, then you can do it. Like we can all do things. Like if if I can do it, anybody can do it. So I was really fortunate. I was blessed to be given the opportunity to prove on like the biggest scale, taking a company public and being the GC of a public company, that like I could do that. So I am, tremendously grateful for the experience and for the people that put me in that position. And I just hope that, the work that I did for them reflects that appreciation that I had for the opportunity that I was given.
Yeah, I love that story. And one of the things that resonated the most for me, what you said is, I guess what I would summarize it as a can-do attitude. You mentioned if you were in an operating room, if you had a book, you'd figure it out. It's interesting from a hiring perspective. Again, I see everything through the lens of a leader. Like if I was hiring and I heard somebody say what you did, yeah, that would be exciting, and I would be interested in hiring something like that. I've always thought, while experience is something we should look at, what is also equally important, if not more so, is I would say skill and desire. So skill slash ability, does this person currently have it? If not, do they have the ability to acquire the skills through proper training and coaching, etc. And then of course there's desire. If you have the skill but without the desire, then that's not a good hire. If you have the desire, don't currently have sort of the experience, but have the ability to learn, then that's a good thing. So it sounds like it worked out for you. And it sounds like also maybe the takeaway there is the relationship with the hiring managers, in this case was the CEO and the CFO, and maybe you guys had a good sort of vibe going where you felt like you guys could work together and maybe complement each other, perhaps in areas where maybe you weren't as strong, perhaps.
I think so. And like I've, in the team sports that I've played or the companies that I've worked for, the success has not been because everybody has known how to do the thing it is that we're doing. The success has been that everyone is pumped about learning and growing into being able to do the thing that it is that we want to do. Right. So, I think that the drive and the energy and the excitement to do something is worth way more than having already done that thing. I know plenty of people that have already done the thing and they're just bored as hell to do it, and they're not excited to do it anymore, and they're just kind of doing it for whatever because they've always done it. And like, I don't want to work with those kind of people, right? I want to work with people that are constantly pushing themselves and trying to do new things and getting excited about new stuff. And I've been really lucky that people have seen that in me and put me in those positions. And then conversely, like I try to put people in those positions now too, to the extent I get the opportunity to. Like I've at least built a few teams, and like I can honestly say like a lot of the hiring I've done has been a reflection of the hiring that people have done for me, which is like they've put me in positions where I can grow and achieve based off the excitement I have for what I have the opportunity to do. And so I try to do the same thing for people when I hire them. I look for someone that's pumped about what they're doing, not necessarily has done it before.
Yeah, so when you say pumped, my interpretation of that is do they know what the mission is, and have they bought into it?
Yep.
So for example, I know that when I joined my current company, Present, I first thing I do is I go, when I research a company, I look at their mission and their values, and I got really excited about the vision, and I felt like I could make it my own. It resonated with a lot of what I was already passionate about. So would you say that perhaps maybe that's what you meant by sort of being passionate? Ideally, obviously everybody needs a paycheck. I respect that. People need to make money to pay their bills, but you shouldn't take a job for the sake of a paycheck. The paycheck should be the result of doing something that you really love / passionate about, etc.
No, I mean, 100%. I mean, I know we're getting into it later, but like I'm currently making $0 and I'm having the most fun and I'm the most excited I've ever been in my entire life. Right. So I very much agree with that. I think that like also like people finding their passion and having those passions align with the mission or the thesis of the company is super important, right? At Hired, I learned that I loved marketplace companies, and I learned that I loved things that benefited individuals directly, because I feel like that's what technology was originally supposed to do. It wasn't supposed to like make the marketing operations of an internal team at a Fortune 500 company a millisecond better. Technology is supposed to make all of our lives a much better, richer place, right? It's supposed to make the world a better place. And so like that's that's what I that's what I try to look for now, is how do I make the world a better place? And I felt like Poshmark was a very logical evolution of that. Yeah, it was a marketplace company, but at the end of the day, it was making the world a better place because it was upcycling clothing. It was reducing, the stress on the environment, but then also it was making things that were previously unreachable for people from an economic perspective all of a sudden reachable. And that thing that some of us may have kept in our closet and never used and just like would have deteriorated, now all of a sudden can be used by somebody that previously like never had the opportunity to own something like that, which is like a really cool thing too. So like it's and even what I'm doing now, it's like, how do I make individuals' lives better? And like that's what I want to focus on. Now, like that might not be everybody's, other people might like the making marketing operations more efficient for internal teams. So like I don't mean that that's like a not noble thing to do, but it's just like not the thing that like excites me or makes me pumped.
I'm with you, Evan, and frankly, I think it's probably why we've known each other for so long. I think why I really enjoy talking to you. I share that sort of. I think the reason I get out of bed is I like to help people, is what I say.
Yep.
I've been able to do that through customer success, helping customers
Sure.
obviously achieve their outcomes with our products and services. And from a leadership perspective, I've tried my best to sort of help coach and mentor my teams to grow and not just accomplish their current role, but grow into their next role, which is a perfect segue. So you mentioned again Altumare. Again, I reached out to you because I saw your post on LinkedIn. Just educate me. What is that? What are you doing? And tell me how it all started.
Yeah. So I've spent probably my entire time out in California trying to figure out when it was I was going to become an entrepreneur. And I've gotten really close a few different times, and either like the team wasn't right, or the idea wasn't right, or I got scammed out of a bunch of money through a Craigslist post, or which is also a true story. So regardless, I spent like a decade like bumbling my way to finally becoming an entrepreneur. And this is like probably the most classic Silicon Valley story that you might hear, but Altumare Capital started so me and my buddy, we'd go out surfing on the weekends and we get coffee afterwards and we talk about like our aspirations and our dreams and like candidly what we thought our life was going to be like after tech, right? And when that was going to come, because we figured eventually either like, I don't know, we were going to be done with it, or it was going to be done with us, or no one was going to want to employ us anymore. Something was going to happen. And so we're like, all right, like what is it that we remember doing, creating real value, throughout our lives and throughout our work. And one of the things that we remember is like back when we were really young, like cutting grass and raking mulch and, like doing home service kind of things, like things that actually brought value back to the community. And as a result, brought like fairly large cash flows into either ourselves as kind of like solo entrepreneurs when we were 16, or to the businesses that we were working for. And so we started to really develop this conviction around like high cash flow, or like cash flowing, high margin home service businesses. Right. And it's that part of the equation is nothing new. I mean, there have been plenty of PE firms that are going out and trying to roll these companies up and invest in them and create bigger assets than you had before and things like that. But what we thought has really been missing, and where we think Altumare Capital injects value, is not just being investors, but actually being operators in these companies. So what we try to do is when we find a company that we're interested in, we don't just invest in them and kind of sit back and wait for cash flows or force them to sell or squeeze customers. We actually get in there and operate the businesses, right? So what we've looked for like home services businesses. We just completed our first acquisition. I announced it today, actually. A home service business in Southern California, really fast growing, great P&L. But just missing a lot of the things that I think us in tech take for granted, right? Like good backend systems, customer relationship management, bookkeeping, automated invoicing, things that can drive ARR in a really meaningful way, standardizing the way labor actually does its work, right? And so I think there's like a little bit of professionalization that we can bring, as well as really deep operational experience that typical PE that just kind of sits and invests is not seeing, right? So like we're trying to build and fill in this chasm between simple investing and then day-to-day SMB management. And that's really where Altumare Capital comes in. And our thesis is driving value for for every side of this marketplace. So if you can think about it, like in standardizing what our labor force does, the customers get better value out of what they do, right? And customers getting better value, all of a sudden, they're willing to probably pay a little bit more, right? So we're not just squeezing them for margin, we're actually giving them a better service. As a result of giving them a better service, we have more margin that we can then pay our labor. So the acquisitions that we've done, we've actually like increased all the money that we've paid to the labor force that we've acquired. Like how many private equity firms are actually paying people more?
Right.
Probably not many, I would guess, but like we are one of the ones that are. And then as a result, we're driving enterprise value out of this customer that then our investors get. So the idea is that like instead of trying to squeeze one side of this marketplace, right? Why don't we just lift all parts of it? Why don't we make everybody's lives better as a result of it, instead of trying to imbalance it so we can like leave somebody else holding the bag? So that's effectively what we've done. We've identified assets that are, asset light, operationally very inefficient, fairly fragmented, and now, what we like about it is like if you think about the traditional tech life cycle, it's like grow, 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 figure out profitability. We're doing the exact opposite. We're finding businesses that are profitable and we're helping them efficiently grow over time. And what we think that produces is it produces stable, cash flowing businesses that are recession proof, that are global and economic condition proof, and can eventually provide value to everybody that's involved instead of just one person that's involved.
Gotcha. So just to make sure I understood you correctly, give me an
Yeah.
example of some of the home services type companies. You mentioned when you were a teenager mowing the lawn. Are you talking about
Yeah.
landscaping, a type of home services? Do you mean something else?
I don't, but what we are, the only thing that we're like secretive about is exactly what vertical it is that we're
Okay.
investing in right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we spent a long time looking at not just individual verticals, but like small, specific expert level
Got
services inside of each of those verticals, and try to figure out where we could build the most value in. So like we're waiting until the next fund or so to really announce exactly what that vertical is.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
But services.
Yes.
So interesting, because obviously we've heard so much in the last year regarding AI technology and automation and a lot of tech jobs going away. And would it be safe to say that perhaps this this venture that you're doing has some sort of insulation against that? Because you're at the end of the day, you're talking about humans performing some sort of jobs, tasks, manual labor. Yeah.
The thing that I love about what we're doing is there's no AI involved at all.
Okay.
None.
Okay.
Like everybody's doing this, and we decide to peel off and do that, right?
Gotcha.
And it's not for lack of my belief in AI, and like I'm still like the biggest advocate for tech there could be, right? But there's just something about creating something real,
Right.
giving somebody something physical that they can see or they can touch, they can interact with, or they can appreciate. I think AI is great. And like, yeah, boy, I wish that I had joined NVIDIA a decade ago too. And so like clearly awesome stuff. But I think that like, I think where you create true longevity is delivering real value, real, tangible value to
Mhm.
customers over a long period of time, right? So like we've all been through booms and busts and been at companies that were supposed to be worth $5 billion and ended up being worth none, and so on and so forth, et cetera. That like it's really refreshing to like just sit there and talk to real customers
Yeah.
that have real problems that are like, holy shit, you fixed the real problem I had. Like that's a good day. That's a really good day in our industry.
I agree with you 100%. And it's, again, my favorite part of my CS role is talking to customers and being able to help them, again, achieve their outcomes and getting that reaction, that satisfaction when you solve the real problem. It's extremely satisfying and frankly, what gives me energy. I could talk to customers all day and not get sort of drained. Whereas internal meetings, I don't get as much satisfaction out of. So it's nice to hear that you're doing that as well. Um, so Evan, something else I wanted to catch up with you about is I know that since the last time we spoke, there's been an addition to your family. You became a father, and you and your wife Courtney have a baby, right? So just curious,
We do.
talk to me about that experience. I'm a dad myself. My kids are a little bit older. My oldest is 16, my youngest is 12. And I feel like I have a greater appreciation for my father and my parents now that I'm a parent myself. How's it been so far for you? Okay, welcome back, Evan.
Thanks.
Good to see you again. So I'm laughing because, yeah, when we started recording this session, it was yesterday, and you had joked that you were going to be the first guest to come back 3 times, and sure enough, you are. Today is the next day. Because of technical difficulties, we couldn't finish our chat yesterday. So here we are again for the 3rd time trying to complete the second interview. So thank you for coming back. And sorry.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. I now I wish that I wouldn't have kept the same shirt on this whole time, because now it's clear that you have changed and I just feel like I look dirty because it looks like in 24 hours I haven't done anything to my appearance.
If it wasn't for the fact that I had a haircut on the calendar this morning, I probably would have worn the same shirt as well. And we wouldn't have to explain this to anybody.
Right, right. I was trying to keep it a secret, but oh well.
I think the hair would have given it away. So it's better that we told the truth here. And
For
my
sure.
question is, it's a different shirt, not the same shirt you had on yesterday. So we're all
This
good.
one?
Yeah.
That's the same one. It's the exact same one.
I love it. Hey, anything for show business, right? Why
That's
not?
right.
So Evan, thank you for making me laugh. It's always great talking to you.
Yeah.
And I want to pick up sort of where we left off when we got interrupted because of the technical difficulties on my side. But nonetheless, I think we were transitioning from talking about your new exciting endeavor at Altumare, and then transitioning
Yep.
into the experience of becoming a dad. So again, let me ask the question that I know we
Sure.
conclude yesterday, but I've been a dad now for 16 years. You became a dad since the last time we spoke. I think your son is 2.5. So I'm
Yep.
just curious. I gained tremendous perspective and appreciation for my father and my mother once I became a parent that I never would have been able to achieve had I not walked a mile in their shoes, as they say.
Right.
So just
Right.
talk to me again. I know your son's only 2.5, but what's it been like? And do you feel the same sort of now better appreciation, understanding of your parents, maybe now that you're one yourself?
Oh, 100%. I think you kind of have to, right? I feel like I was always the person in the airport that was like pissed off at the parents, and it's like, are you kidding? They got to have their kids sitting right next to me, and why can't they get a handle on their child? And, like, why did this kid got to be running around the airport? And like now, when I'm in the airport and I see a kid running around, I'm like, they must be having so much fun, and like they're having a blast, right? And like, and I like, so I feel like that, you get this perspective when you actually become a parent that you didn't have before. And I like I actually think about like my emotions prior to having a kid and like just how unnecessarily frustrated I was at like other parents and things like that. And I'm like, man, like I was being a real ass
Yeah.
about this, like I didn't have that compassion and that empathy
Yeah.
that I have now. And then and so that's speaking more broadly. And then I think more specifically to my parents, I remember like I think it was like 24 hours after Taylor was born, I like called my mom up and I was like, I have so much more respect for you than I did before, And it's not that I didn't have 100% respect for my mom before, but it's just like that pie had
Right.
grown, right? So like you just I think this is true for everything. You just gain perspective and you gain appreciation when you're finally in the situation. And I think like the one thing that it's done too is like it's made me realize that like there are other things in this world that I don't have that perspective on as well. And so now every time I'm like shift into like overly critical or hypercritical or frustrated mode about insert anything that's going on in the world, I'm like, well, wait a minute. Like I probably don't actually get
Right.
like everything that's going on and like what's going on with them and so on, right? So like being a parent, I think gives you perspective not just into like children, but I think like into the world more broadly too. So I feel like I've become a much more empathetic and more and
Hmm.
more patient to find that contextualization for people than I had previously.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. So obviously we can talk a lot about just being a dad and how much fun that
Yeah.
is, but you really hit the nail on the head and resonates for me because I have said the same myself, is that I didn't realize just how ignorant I was speaking on things that I, again, had no direct experience. So how
Right.
can I criticize a parent, another parent, until I became one myself?
Right.
Uh, and yes, like you, I definitely feel like I've become more empathetic and of not being so critical when again I can't speak to someone else's plight, something that they're going through, etc.
Yeah, 100%. a hundred
So
percent. I feel like I built like, or at least I thought I was building so much of my early career on like being comfortable speaking to things that I had no idea about, right? And like you almost like it's almost like you spend the early part of your professional and adult life feeling like you have to be like overly knowledgeable about everything, even when you aren't, right? And having a kid almost like made me realize the exact opposite, which is like the power
yeah,
that you gain in being able to say like I don't really know what's going on or I need help or like I clearly don't understand something, like help me understand it, right? So like and it's not that like everybody needs to have a kid, right? Like other people can come to this realization without the catalyzing event of having a child. It just happened to be the thing that helped catalyze it for me, I
yeah,
think, most directly.
yeah, yeah, no, exactly right. However we get there, I think uh, we definitely grow as humans once we realize the extent of our own ignorance,
Right.
and we're
Right.
not afraid to admit it any longer.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And
because
and that happens. I mean, I feel like like hopefully I never have to interview for a job again, but to the extent I do, and even in like more recent interviews, like since Taylor was born, I've realized just how powerful being able to say that you don't know something, right? And that like, you have room to grow or whatever it is. And it was all this stuff that like you feel like you heard early on in your career, but it felt like a weakness to say it. And then like finally, I'm like, it's not, there's a lot of there's a lot of power and humility and I think respect that you get when someone says I just don't get it, I don't know what's going on, I don't have the perspective that you have and so on, right? So like it's really interesting how these moments in time like help evolve us as
Mhm.
individuals, both personally and professionally.
Yeah, and it takes courage, right? Because it's kind of risky and it's kind of scary to admit you don't know. You're always worried about being judged or being seen
Yep.
less than. So I
Right.
definitely, it takes a certain amount of courage to sort of get there. So it's great that fatherhood has helped you get there. So that's wonderful.
Yeah.
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 And I know also you were touching upon yesterday when we were chatting about just appreciating maybe the things we take for granted as they're seen through your child's eyes. So can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, one of the things that I think has been like super cool is being able to re-experience everything for the first time again. Like Taylor will have a new food, right? Or he'll hear the ice cream truck, or he'll see a flower that he thinks is really pretty or something. And like I think we spend all of our adult lives like trying to focus on these like macro events, like my career and planning for retirement, and is the world gonna implode upon itself because of whatever, and we miss these like really special little moments that we can appreciate, right? Like trying something new, or it doesn't even need to be trying something new. It's like having a food that you really love and having the opportunity to do that, or recognizing some new plant on your walk to work, or seeing the clouds again for the first time. And like I've learned this lesson a bunch of times in my life, but it's become um much more apparent to me now that I'm a parent. But I remember like real specifically one of the first times I learned this was when I moved out to California. We were talking about this yesterday, maybe when we cut off, is like I'm sure that like the drive from like Palo Alto to San Mateo on the 280, and like you're driving there, and like the reservoirs are on the left hand side of the highway, and the Santa Cruz Mountains are there, and the fog is like rolling down the hills. And the first like couple quarters I was out here, or maybe the first quarter I was out here, I'd be driving home and I'd be like, whoa, I get to like live out here, and this is what I get to see, and this is incredible. And oh my God, like God could have never created something as beautiful as Northern California. And it just felt like this incredible experience. And then like a year went by, and and then you're just like driving and you're frustrated, like I can't believe that this deal didn't close, and blah 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 blah, and you're like listening to talk radio and you're all pissed off. And then like all of a sudden you look to the left and you realize that like all the things that you thought were incredible at one point have become so commonplace that they lose
Right.
their essence, their the specialness that they had before. So I'm trying like really hard to not lose those things from the noise that we have in our
Yeah.
daily lives. And I think like Taylor, my son, is like a huge source of not losing that specialness in my day-to-day life.
Yeah, that's great. And for what it's worth, I do know the exact stretch of freeway you're talking about. And yeah, obviously, I know when we spoke yesterday offline, I mentioned, definitely agree with you. And maybe one of the things I mentioned that I thought maybe I didn't do enough of is letting your children really enjoy the novelty and the
Right.
mystery around something we take for granted. I think there was probably a lot of times where maybe I was kind of, I demystified something that was again special to him, which robs them of a wonderful experience. So I
Right.
don't really give parenting advice, but I would say if anybody was asking, I would say definitely let your children enjoy their youth and every new experience, even though we might take it for granted.
I mean, 100%. And I think that like, especially in like the tech and VC world and this world that we live in, like we're so in tune to like being more efficient, getting things done faster, getting things done better, like, and so on. And like, the goals ratchet up every month and every quarter and whatever. And it's really easy to feel like your life needs to be that way too. Like I need to make sure that I get to work just a minute quicker, and I need to make grocery shopping 40 minutes, not
Right.
45 minutes, and so on. And so like this morning in particular, I was walking Taylor to school, and there was like this puddle of water from like the sprinklers or something like outside of the elementary school that's right next to us. And like he walked by that and like let go of my hand and ran back to the puddle, and he was just like running like back and forth through this puddle. And it would have been really easy to just like grab his arm and be
Yeah.
like, no dude, we gotta go, like school like starts right now, and usually we only take 3 minutes, and now we're going to take 5, and like getting
Yeah.
all flustered about that. But instead it's like, dude, just let the kid play in the puddle for a little bit. And so I just sat there and watched him like run circles in this puddle, and it was like it was the best time for him, and so it's just like these little things that I think we to your point, we demystify because
Yeah.
we like are trying to optimize our lives or get things
Yeah.
done or whatever, when really like that is the point of life, is like running, finding
Yeah.
the time to run through those puddles before school.
Yeah, no, I love that. And for what it's worth, it's funny. I'm thinking back. So I have two boys, and I remember when my wife and I decided to go for number two. I was like, okay, I'm going to learn from all the mistakes I made with the first one. I'm going to be better than the second time. And now I'm
Yeah.
sitting here thinking, was I better? Is it ever good enough? I think if I'm being fair, yeah, my hope is that I'm probably not as bad as I remember. I was better than the first time, but certainly still made plenty of mistakes. And, hopefully I'll get a chance to rectify that when I get grandchildren one day. And I think
Yeah.
parent,
Well, if we did everything right the first time, then we wouldn't have awesome periods of reflection like this. So like all of these things are important
yeah,
parts of life, right?
yeah, for sure. Hey, so talk to me about you also, I think since the last time we spoke, you added author to your many different
Yeah.
accomplishments. You wrote a book. Do you want to talk to me about what that was and what was the idea behind it?
Yeah. So like growing up, I don't know, like kids want to be an astronaut or a baseball player or something like that. And I'm sure I wanted to be all those things. But the thing that I really wanted to be is I really want to be a cartoonist. I like grew up like reading the Sunday paper and reading Calvin and Hobbes and Garfield and all these different cartoons. And I would just spend hours and hours and hours drawing. Like my parents bought me one of those like angular drawing tables, and I would just draw cartoons over and over and over again. And when I was in college, I drew for the Alligator, which was the paper at UF. So I was like the cartoonist for the Alligator. And but like as things seem to, as adulthood catches up to us, we realize that like maybe we aren't going to be an astronaut or a baseball player or a cartoonist, and we got to go do something a little bit more boring, like go to law school and be an attorney, right? But like I've always been a firm believer that like, you should keep trying to actualize and realize your dreams at some point, right? And hold on to a lot of like the childhood passion that you had for things, right? So like one of the things that I had a passion for was drawing, being creative. I, played music growing up. So like I was a stand-up comedian for a while after law school. Like I had all these creative outlets that kind of like took the place of drawing a little bit. And then when I decided to like be a full-time boring attorney and give up being a stand-up comedian, I realized that I was doing like nothing creative for a long time. I wasn't drawing, I wasn't telling stupid jokes, I wasn't playing music. And finally I was like, all right, I got to do something like with all of this creative stuff that I have in me that I just need to like get out. And so um I was like, at that point there were, I mean, I don't know if there's still Sunday morning cartoons, but I don't think that there are, right? So I'm like, all right, like I want to draw. One of the other things too is like, I had always thought about my dad has published a number of books. They're all like science books about DNA and mitochondria and things like that. And I was like, well, I'm not going to publish a mitochondria book, but maybe I can do something with like drawing and publishing a book and so on. And so I sat down and I was like, I'm just going to write a children's book. I'm going to write it. I'm going to draw it. And like, I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but like, I'm just going to do it. And so like one day I sat down, I just started drawing and and writing, and I wrote this long form poem about our cat Max and what he does during the day when my wife and I go out to work, and like all the adventures that he gets into. And I drew it, and it just like sat there for a while on this Samsung tablet that I like wrote it on, and it just like collected internet dust for like the longest time. Like I didn't know what to do with it. Um, and then kind of out of nowhere, my mom does yoga at this place in Gainesville where she met a director of this program called the Arts and Medicine program at UF. And what the Arts and Medicine program is it basically brings in like artists, creative individuals, musicians, etc., to the children's ward at the hospital. And it's basically like not alternative medicine, but it's ways of healing that are not just doing procedures and injecting people with things and giving them pills. And instead, like it's like, you know, more holistic healing, right? Through sitting down and drawing with somebody or singing a song with somebody. And like, if nothing else, giving people something other to do in the hospital than just like sit around and watch TV, right? And I was like, what? So when I heard about this program, it spoke to me not just because like, as a creative individual, but also because of the university, my connection to the University of Florida. And I was like, wouldn't it be cool if I used something that was a creative outlet that I had recently found to somehow give back to this program? So I ended up raising money and published this book, and all the proceeds from the publishing of the book and the selling of the book, I used and also matched the amount that was sold and donated all of that to the arts and medicine program, and then also gave them like a big stack of the books as well. And so they could, go out and buy paints or guitars or whatever it is they wanted to do with it. And it was it was just a really, really cool, really special experience to be able to give back to a city and an institution that's given me so much, and also hopefully give a little bit of my talent back to people that need it and kids that need it. And I got the opportunity to go there and draw with some of the kids that were in the hospital too, and many of them can draw way better than I can, so they'll be way more successful at being creative than I am. But it's really fun in like my own little way to like actualize that dream that I had growing up and find a way to use that to give back where I think it can be super helpful.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed the book, and it's in my youngest son's room.
Awesome.
Uh, had I planned better, I would have had a copy of it here with me. Can people still buy the book, or was it a limited production?
You can still you can buy the book on Amazon, but it's like it's a paperback book instead of a hardcover book. But then what I'm doing is like at the end of every year, I'm looking at all the sales on Amazon, and I'm just going to continue to match those sales as well to the extent more gets bought. So like I want to make sure that it keeps doing good, even if it's in a much more limited capacity than when I first published it and raised money for it.
I gotcha. I'll make sure that I add a link in the description of this video
Great.
so people can find that. One thing I did want to ask you about is I've always enjoyed talking to you. I love the art of conversation. Verbal communication is my preferred method.
Okay.
I can write, but I really don't enjoy it. It's quite laborious for me.
Yeah.
Is that the case with you, or do you find that writing is just as easy for you as the verbal spoken word?
They're I find they both come fairly natural to me. It's funny. Growing up, I was pretty quiet as a kid, if you can imagine. In fact, like my mom tells this story. I think it was like my sixth or seventh grade history teacher, like in my report card or whatever it was like Evan's a great student, but he really needs to speak up more in class. It was just like super quiet. And then like something switched, like I don't know, senior year of high school or something like that, and now I've just been like making up for lost time ever since, and like I never shut up now as opposed to like never spoke apparently. So I've always really enjoyed that. I've enjoyed speaking with people, learning through talking with people. I think that was it's one of the things that like I really loved about stand-up comedy, is getting to travel all over the nation and tell jokes and interact with people from all different backgrounds, all different education levels. There's this there's this saying in comedy that there are no bad audiences, just bad jokes, right? And so the whole idea is that like, comedians from the West Coast will go to the South and they'll be like, like all those idiots in the South, just like they don't get smart humor. And then someone from the South will come to the Northeast and they'll be like, all those liberals in the Northeast just don't understand Southern humor. And it's like, no, 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 your jokes just stink. Like you just can't connect with people, right? And I think that like it's so important to speak, to interact with and connect with as many people as you can, and like learn not just that skill but that appreciation for doing it, because we don't have the luxury, or we shouldn't have the luxury in our lives of like being able to echo chamber ourselves, right? Especially not in the business world. I found that like doing stand-up comedy almost really helped me in the work that I did as an in-house attorney, because I wasn't just speaking to other lawyers. I was speaking to you. I was speaking to eng teams, product teams, finance teams, and so on, right? You don't have the luxury of just speaking to people that understand your language, understand the legal language, right? And I find writing to be a very similar outlet to speaking. And I didn't always, but the trick that maybe it's not a trick, but the thing that I realized when I really started enjoying writing is when I stopped trying to write like I was writing. And what I mean by that is I started writing like I was speaking, right? So all of a sudden, instead of trying to create these perfect sentences and I don't know, like what they teach you in legal writing or composition in college or whatever, and it's like I just threw all that out the window. And it's like, you know what, I'm gonna write like I'm talking to somebody. And like maybe that doesn't work for like legal agreements, you know, so I still kind of like write all buttoned up when I'm writing a legal agreement. But if I'm writing an email to somebody, a text message, if I'm sitting down and writing, I write this like neat working blog sometimes, right? I just try to like just to write like I'm talking. You know,
Mhm.
like if somebody was listening or if it got like text to voice or something, like I want someone to feel and appreciate who I am, and not just feel like they're reading like a chat GPT article or something like that. So I think as soon as I figured out that I should write the way I speak instead of trying to write differently or write the correct way, I started enjoying it a lot more. And I think it resonates a lot more as a result of that.
I see. You've done so many things. You've accomplished a lot. I'm just curious, what advice do you have for people that either are having difficulty figuring out what they want to do, or people that figure out what they want to do, but actually making it happen? Can you speak on both of those? Because I know it's often
Ooh.
a challenge.
Yeah, I would say the best thing to do is to just go do it. And that's the answer to, I think, both of those questions, right? I think that people get paralysis around, paralysis of choice because they're like, oh, I don't know if I want to be, I don't know if I want to be in marketing or if I want to be in finance. Probably bad examples, but in any event, just go do one of those things, right? Just do it. Like, just give it a shot. Same thing with like trying something new or pivoting in your career. I've done some career pivots. But I know people in my life that have done much more dramatic career pivots, and um, I think that we're used to this old school mentality of like, I don't know, my grandfather worked the same job on the railroad for his entire life. And, we grew up hearing that if you switch careers, you reset all the way back to zero and you're going to be so far behind. And like, the truth to that is like, no, you aren't, because you're gaining skills and experience, and tools that you can still be successful in, even if you pivot, right? You have to figure out what those are and you have to use them appropriately, but you don't go back to zero. And then I think secondly is, so what? Who cares if you go back to zero if you love what you're doing? Or like you're on the planet once, right? And because you've been doing a job for 10 years, you got to do that same job for another 30 because you're afraid of what? That your one shot you got at this being fulfilling and making you happy. So like go do whatever it is you want to do and like experiment around. I don't think anyone's going to fault people for doing that. And if they do, that's not the person you want to work for, or that's not the person you want to be with in your life, right? So I always like one of the goals that I have is like I've always wanted to be a chiropractor. Um, I don't know why. I think it's because my chiropractor growing up worked 3 days a week and drove a Porsche 911 to work, and like that seemed like a great gig to me. But something in the back of my head has always been like, I want to go be a chiropractor. And so, still somewhere back there, I'm like, maybe when I turn like 60, I'm just gonna go to chiropractic school and then like go be a chiropractor the last 15 years of my working life. I don't know, but I would say that like we get too wrapped around the axle of like feeling like we're gonna be starting over, or feeling like people are going to judge us, or feeling like I'm going to be the the elder person in this new cohort of younger individuals that are going to look, I don't know, like, just who cares,
Yeah.
just go do it. I think that's the best way to learn something new, to pivot into something new. Like, just try it out. You got one shot to do it, go do it.
Good. I love it. Evan, that's a perfect place to end the
Great.
conversation today. I think we got lucky. I don't want to push my luck here and risk any more technical difficulties. Uh,
Yep.
Evan, always a pleasure. How can people get a hold of you if they want to learn more about you and what you're doing?
Yeah. You can email me. The email is super easy. It's evan@altumarecapital.com. And that comes right to me. It doesn't go to anybody else. And I love talking with people about alternative investments, what we're doing at Altumare Capital, college football, surfing, snowboarding. I just love meeting new people and doing this kind of stuff, right? So I think that, that's how I learn, that's how I grow, that's how we all grow. So no one should be afraid to email me, and I'm always happy to jump on a call and talk about drawing or, whatever. It doesn't matter. I'm here and I'm always happy to chat.
Love that. And of course, you're on LinkedIn.
Yep.
What about Instagram or TikTok, anything like that? Or
I'm on Instagram. My profile is public, sometimes to the chagrin of my wife, but I figure like whatever. I'm just like an open book, and then that's it. I'm mainly just on Instagram, and I have a Twitter account, but I think I've tweeted like 4 times, and both of them have been to the Pizza Hut Twitter account. So like I don't do a whole lot of serious stuff on Twitter at all.
okay, well, I'll make sure we include links to all that in the
Okay,
description below. Evan, always a pleasure. I really enjoyed talking to you, my friend, and I'm looking forward
same.
to part 4 at some point in the future.
It's gonna happen.
All right, bye-bye.
Thanks.